Hi, welcome to this Excel tutorial video. Today we're going to look at drop-down lists. This video is recorded in March 2021 using Excel 365. So in Excel you have the ability to put a validation in a cell, so you're only allowed to put specific choices, you're only allowed to select specific options. And I want to show you a couple of examples of how we do this. First of all, we'll select the cell that we're interested in adding the validation to. We'll go to data, go to this button here that is called data validation, and if we click on that we get this data validation box. For this first example we're going to say the only options that we're going to allow are yes and no. So if we click on this drop down and we choose a list, and in this source area here we can say we can put yes, no. We can put any amount of options in here. It's simply a comma delimited list of options, but for this example we're just going to put yes and no. And now you can see next to our cell here we've got this little drop down arrow, and if I click on it we've got yes and no as an option. We can copy that cell and paste it below, and what that will do is it will paste the selected option, but also it will paste in the validation setup as well. Also, if we highlight the cell that's got the validation setup and we use shift and use the down arrow in this case, and we go down a load of cells, these cells here, cells 4 to 10, don't have the validation setup, but while we've got this cell here highlighted and those highlighted below it, if we now press this data validation button, we get the option to copy the validation down all of those cells. So let's say yes, and it's just kind of popped this up to say, is this the validation that you're interested in? We'll say yes. Now nothing obvious has happened, but if we now select this box here, it's got the drop down yes and no, and if we go down here we've got the drop down as well. And then if we go outside of the range that we selected, we don't have that drop down anymore. Another option is maybe we want to, rather than offer, we want to validate an input. So if we highlight this cell here, click on data validation again, we have an option in here to be a whole number as an example. And we can say our whole number's got to be between 1 and 10. We'll click OK. Nothing obvious has happened, but if we type in there 20, we get a message saying, hold on a minute, that doesn't match the validation, you can't do it. So okay, we'll cancel that. Let's put in fly. Nope, you can't do that either. That's not particularly helpful, that message, but as I know I'm allowed to put between 1 and 10. If I put 1 in there, it accepts it. If I try and put 11 in there, it doesn't accept it. So that message wasn't particularly helpful, so let's go about changing that message. Still within this cell, click on this data validation box. There's our validation. Now we've got this little alert message here. So we've got a message that stops us from putting in something that's not valid, which is fine. Let's give it a title. We'll just put my validation, just so you can see that it's not kind of Microsoft out the box. And in here we'll say must be between 1 and 10. Now when we enter data that isn't valid, we get there's our little header there, my validation, and there's a bit more of an informative error. Okay, so we'll cancel that. The other options in here, we can say, okay, instead of it being a stop, we'll just get a warning. Now what a warning does is if I put something in there, it now says, hey, it must be between 1 and 10, but do you want to continue? Or it will say yes, we do. And that allows 11, even though it doesn't, it's not valid. So let us just do a couple more examples. Let me just copy this down here. Remember, I've highlighted the cell that's got the validation in. I've highlighted cells that don't have the validation in. And when I press that, it offers to extend the validation to all of the highlighted cells. So let's now change our message from a warning just to information, and we'll click OK. Now if I try and put in something that is outside of our validation, we get a message, but instead of it saying, do you want to continue or not, it just says, fine, I'm happy you're doing it. The validation's wrong, there's information about it, but okay, it's fine, you can carry on. And now if I say put in 10, 5 and 20 or 21, get that message again. Now if I highlight this, if I click on this little option here in this drop down here, it says circle the invalid data. So you've got your validation set up on these cells. You click on this circle invalid data and it shows you the cells that don't follow the validation rules. And then this option below clears that down. Now let's look at text validation options. So if we click on here again, let's just ignore, let's go back rather to the settings and we'll go here and we'll say text length. So let's choose the same options and we'll say the entry's got to be between 0 and 10 characters long. You've got options here, greater than, less than, that sort of thing, but let's just do 0 to 10. So in here now, if I put in fly like I did before, well, that's accepted. But if I put in something that's over 10 characters, I'll get a message. And in this case, it's a warning message, an error message rather, so I can't put it in. If I try and retry, it won't work. All I can do is cancel it. So text, number, that sort of validation works in the same way. It's nice and straightforward, I think. The last thing I want to look at is where we want to build a range of options. So rather than just being yes and no, or a small handful of comma separated options that we put in a list, maybe we've got a lot of options here in a range of data that we might want to maintain. So in this cell here, if we click on this box here, and with the same options as the yes and no, we select list. We can type in here, like I did before with yes and no, a comma separated set of options, or we can click on this arrow button here, and this allows us to go back to Excel and select a range. So I'm going to go to here in cell 2, in sheet 2, and I've got a list of films here. I'll highlight the top one and I'll press Control, Shift and down, and it takes me all the way down to highlight cells all the way down from rows rather from 1 to 99. That's exactly what I want. Click on that box again. It takes me back to this little window and I click OK. Now in this drop down here, I have all of those options that are in my range, 99 of them, and I can select them. So that's pretty good. What happens now then? Let's think about, well, something to mention here. This list here is in alphabetical order as I put it in here. The order of this list here is the order of this list here. So if I switch this order about and I say instead of being alphabetical A to Z, let's change it from Z to A. Now if I go down to here and I click on the drop down, our options now begin at Z and go down to A, because that's the order in our range. So let's go back here, put it back to A to Z. Now let's imagine I've got 99 films in there and I need to add another option. So let's say I want to add, let's go at the top here, Frozen 3 for an example. Adding data within a range is quite good. So Excel is quite clever in that if I were to go to here and I say, if I right click on the row and I say insert and I add Frozen 3 there. When I come back to here, then the option has been added. It knows, it's clever enough to know that I've added something within my range, so it's expanded the range automatically. So that's quite cool. If I look at my validation here, it was going to 99, now it's going to row 100 because I've added it within a range. But if I go down to here, and in fact, just before I do that, let me just copy all of these down here like we did before. Highlight, press that. Okay, so now if I, just to prove the bottom option is Zootopia, there it is. Now if I go to sheet 2 and I, using control and down arrow, go to the bottom of my list, if I add, I can't think of a film, I'll just, ZZ Top, obviously it's not a film, but if I add that to the bottom of my list, when I come back to here, Excel doesn't know I've added that because I haven't added it within the existing range, within that row. I've added it outside of it. I've added it off the bottom, if you like. So I need to update my range by going to here. And I can change that to be 101. And that will now include my new option, and I'll click OK. And I should now see ZZ Top at the very bottom. There it is. Here, on the one below it, if I go down to the very bottom here, I won't see ZZ Top because I only changed it here. So what you need to do, if I click on this and I click on my data validation and I say, no, I want an extra row here, you've got this little button here, this little checkbox that says apply these changes to all of the cells. Click yep. You'll see it's now highlighted all of the other cells that have the same data validation setup. Click OK, and now all of those cells should have ZZ Top at the very bottom of the list. That's the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful.